Hello there, it's Jay here from Jay's Vintage Junk, and today this is going to be part 3 of the Amiga 600 recap series. If you remember from the last 2 videos, we've now done all the caps in this area, we've done all the caps in this area. All we've got left to do is the 2 audio caps there. And this is going to be the fun, because I said there is a really dirty way of doing this. I've seen it done on countless Amigas that I've looked in and done little bits on in the past, and that is to basically to rock those 2 capacitors until they break away, and then clean up the pads. You can get in there with a bit of braid and your soldering iron without touching that. And once you've got them cleaned up, take to what's the value on these? 22 UF through hole capacitors, and bend the legs so they're quite short, and then just bend a little 90 degree on each end. Basically solder them into place and then just push them down flat, and yes, it will work. If you haven't got the desoldering equipment I've got, it probably would be the best way of approaching it, to be fair, unless you can actually get someone that's got the equipment to do the proper job for you. It's really, like I say, unless you're going to take off that, you're going to take them off. That's the only way I can see of actually doing this really properly. I suppose technically some Captain tape round there, some Captain tape round there, and you could take them off with hot air and you could replace them with hot air, but I don't think you'd be able to get a really good join. I think it'd still be messy. I think the best way of doing this is to whip them off, whip that off, get in there with the hot air, get them off, solder the new ones back on, and then reinstate them 2 connectors. So I think that's the way we're going to. That's what we're going to do, basically. We'll spin the board over. First things first, I suppose. We'll get the audio connectors off there, and that should give us some. We are going to have to take them off, yeah, because there's just not enough room to get in there otherwise. Hopefully, I can get them off with this. Bit I've got in the desolder station. Let's have a go. I might have to. In fact, let's get the keyboard connector off first, because I know that the pins on my desoldering station will fit this. Basically, it's going to take a while. We can't mess this up because we want to put this connector straight back on when we've finished. Some of these we may have to go over again. At the end of it there, I'm just gonna I think what I'm going to have to do there is reflow a little bit of solder into some of them and suck them again, because I don't think all of them have come out as well as I'd really want. I'm just going to go in there with a screwdriver and just give them a little flick test. Some of these have freed off quite nicely, but others are still, I can see, are still well connected to the board. But what I think we'll do is we'll go in with some solder. We'll resolder a lot of them, and we'll have another wick at them. leaked. I'm wondering whether them audio capacitors near there have leaked. They didn't look particularly leaky, but the fact that that solder hasn't flowed as well as I was expecting, it does kind of give an indication that we may have some leakage around there, and we do have two capacitors which could leak right next to it. So like I said, we'll go in, we'll add some fresh solder where I think it's necessary, and hopefully that'll help us get them out. Oh, I can smell fish. Yep, those caps are leaky. I'm actually surprised I didn't have more audio issues. Definitely the way to go is just to add some nice fresh solder before we have another suck at these. Basically what you do when you're doing this, every time you remove it, you're taking more of the contaminated solder away, because it does mix. The new solder will mix with the contaminated solder, and then when you suck it away, you're actually sucking away more of the contaminated solder every time. We'll go back in there and we'll have another go with the better. I think we're pretty good on that side there. That seemed a lot better that time, but the smell's quite unpleasant at the moment, so we're definitely got leaky capacitor to contend with once we get this out. Okay, so far so good. We'll just try giving it a quick rock from the other side. I don't think we're quite there yet, but we'll just see how close we are. We'll just spin the board back round. And you don't want to really wrench on it, we just want to give it a little bit of a... Oh, look at that. See if we can move it. The whole thing's moving. And we're just going to ever so gently. Don't want to use any force doing this at all. You literally just want to very, very gently ease it. There we go. And we've got the connector off. Absolutely no damage to the connector. No damage to the board. We will go back in now with the desoldering station though, and just wick some of that extra solder we've got around them parts off. And I can tell straight away as soon as I've got that room. In fact, I'll zoom you down so you can have a quick look. Oops. Let's see if we can get it to focus on my finger. Come on. Let's see if we can really get it to focus. Come on. Can you focus down there? Just bring it up a tiny touch. That doesn't look too out of focus, but if you can see around here, that doesn't look good. There you go, you can see it now. Yeah, with very dull solders around the that side of them capacitors, so that has definitely, and it spreads, it's around here as well. So we are going to have to do a fair bit of cleanup in this area. It's going to be quite inevitable, unfortunately. I suppose next we're really going to have to get those off, aren't we? I wonder if we can do it with the manual desoldering pump, because I'm trying to think what the hell I've done with all my other bits from my desoldering station, and I have a horrible feeling they might be up in the attic, and there is tons and tons of stuff up there at the moment which I just can't I can't move. Let's see if we can get them out with the manual desoldering pump. Let's get you up a bit. There we go. We should be able to. What we'll do straight away is we'll add some fresh solder just to dilute down that manky solder. That's a nice long piece. I'll crank the iron up a little bit. Right, I'll start here. Yeah, just heating these solder points here, and it stinks straight away of bad fish. So I think the electrolyte leakage is actually quite bad in this area. So just warming the board like that with the irons causing them that electrolyte to stink. Okay, let's start here. I think these are going to come out quite easily. And don't let me put these back in the wrong way around, will you? So white with it facing towards me, white's on my left hand side. Right, they look fairly clear straight away actually. That's come out. Let's just try heating there and perhaps just giving it a quick. There we go. We might be able to get the desoldering station on that and just clean it up a little bit now. There we go, that should come out. A little bit stiff still. Oh, it's come in now. Yeah, it just needs a little bit more heat on that front pad just to help it come out, and we'll clean them up. Something just holding that. Don't want to put too much force on it. It's out there. It's just that front one. Like I said, we might just try putting the pump back on it. See if there's a bit more solder we can wick away. Might just add a bit of fresh to that front one there. It's being a little bit problematic. There we go. There's something holding that though, and I don't want to force it and risk pulling a pad. So we'll just have a quick. See that side there is that free? There we are. Just being held on at the front. But if I heat that up now, it should drop out. There we go. Out. So that's the first of them them disconnected. We'll clean that up. It does look a bit manky actually. I think while it's out we can give that a really good clean. It looks, ugh. I don't know what that is, but it's wiping off from my finger. Look, it was like black along there, and that's just cleaned off from my finger. It's come back nice and shiny. Look at that side. You see how black that is? Let's get it white with my finger. Look, I think that's residue from them capacitors actually. Right, so we've got that out. Let's just clear that hole while we're here. So it's ready for the it to go back in. Right. Let's try and get the red one out. Basically the same thing. We'll use the manual desoldering to get most of the solder off it. Reeks, absolutely reeks that. I think we're going to do a really good clean up of the board around here. What we did on the last thing. This might end up as us doing the disk drive mod on a completely separate video actually. I don't know how long this is going to take, so I don't want to rush it. Not since we've done so well with all the other capacitors on this board. Let's make sure we do a really nice job of this one as well. So then back two connections there look fairly clear. It's this one that's been a bit of a pain. Add a little bit of fresh solder to it. Now it's been a bit of a pain, this one. Let's have a quick look. So those back two connections don't look bad at all. They look fairly clear. It's this front one here that's being a right pain in the whatnot. Actually, why don't we try getting a little bit of desolder braid and see if we can help ourselves out with a little bit of desolder braid. See if that'll wick away some of the excess solder. We'll add some flux. No, flux pen's a bit crap. And we'll just have a go and see if we can get a bit of that away with some solder braid. Just like this. So we can wick some of the solder out. The problem is we've got a great big ground plane here and it's just sapping all the heat out. Get my pliers and we'll just try wiggling them back. And back connections, make sure that they're free, because they feel quite free. And let's just have a little, make sure it's straight, because they do have a tendency to put a slight bend on these, so they're like clipping the board as they go through the soldering process. Make it a little bit tricky for us to get them out. There we go. Right, that got it. In fact, while I've got it like that, I'll just get the proper desoldering station in, and we'll just see if we can clean away some of the solder from around there. Right, we're nice and clear there, and we'll flip it back over and just see if we can walk that safely out of the board. There we go, that's come forwards, and we've got that out of the board. There's zero damage to the board again, but that is filth. I don't know if you can see that, that's filthy. It really is horrible and dirty, that. Well, so we'll give that a clean, same as the other one. But before that, I think we should get these two nasty capacitors off the board. So I've got my hot air. Just let it come up to temp, and we'll do like we did last time. We'll just warm the board. We've got to be a bit careful because obviously we've got plastic components in this area, but if we're careful enough, we shouldn't affect them. We shouldn't damage them at all doing this. Because we're not going to be getting that close to them with the really hot air. All I'm doing at the moment is just, like I said, just giving the parts of the board that we're going to be working on a little bit of a preheat. And once I've got it warm enough that I'm happy, I'll just go in and I'll start warming up around those two capacitors, and we can get those. Oh, I can start smelling the electrolyte warming up now. Right, let's make a start with you. I can already tell these are going to be more troublesome than the previous capacitors that we've removed. And that one's off. I think we might have lost a pad there. And that one's off. Alright, let's see if we've lost a pad. No, we haven't. The pads are intact. They're absolutely filthy and full of crap and corrosion. Well, let me just zoom you in. So, as you can see, we do have all four pads completely intact. We're just going to have a hell of a lot of cleanup work to do in this area before we can put the new capacitors in place. Well, with that in mind, I'm going to go and make myself a cup of coffee. So we'll be right back in a second when I have coffee to continue. So be right back. Right, okay, we have coffee. Most important thing needed when you're doing something like this, a good cup of coffee. Right, first things first, we're going to have to sort this area out because it's manky. We'll go in first with a bit of vinegar, and we'll have a bit of a white brown, good white brown here. There really is some nasty corrosion by them pads there. Let's get my glasses on. Yeah, there is some really horrible corrosion around them pads, but I think the pads are savable. I think I've been incredibly lucky with this board. Incredibly lucky. Let's really gently, we'll just see if we can remove. I want to be careful because just be mindful that there might be some little bits sticking up of solder from where we've removed components there, and I don't want to risk catching one of them with a little hair off the Q-tip and pulling a pad at this point. Just like there's a little bit of the little bit on that pad there that if you weren't careful and you was to just brush over the pad, you could risk pulling the pad up. You can see how manky that's just come. That's just from cleaning up around that area. I said it's quite as the corrosion goes on this board. I think this is probably the worst part. This is even possibly a little bit worse than over on the other section that we did. It was probably more spread out on the other section over there, but I'd say that there's actually probably more actual possible corrosion damage over here. Look, you can see that coming off. Oops. Just get right over here. So we're a bit. Right, lovely. That doesn't look so bad, does it? That's actually cleaned up nicely. Well, we need a little bit more work on it, but that look, that's just what's come off that bit of the board there. Right, let's move over with some isopropyl, and we'll give that area a quick scrub over with a little bit of isopropyl. I don't think I'll use my scrubbing my toothbrush. I will just use another Q-tip. And all we're doing with this is just literally removing any residue left from that vinegar. So basically what we've done is we've used the vinegar to help lift any of the electrolyte that was remaining on the board. Because it seems to, like I say, I'm pretty certain that electrolyte's an alkali. And the acid really just helps to neutralise what's remaining on the board, but as well as that, it also helps to dislodge it from the board. So then when you go in with your isopropyl, you can actually clean up the residue that's there, and it does clean up. I'm not saying you couldn't do it just with isopropyl, but I think you'd still leave a little bit of a corrosive residue around, as where doing it this way, you're helping get rid of that, really. You're helping get rid of any of that corrosive residue that might still be on the board. A couple of places there. I'm just gonna possibly go in with the I'll just switch the desolder station back on, and I might just have a quick suck at a couple of these pins here where I can just see like a little bit of solder I want to get rid of, and then I think I'm just going to go over some of these in fact, while we wait for that to warm up, we're just going to go over these pads here round where the audio connector was. I'm not going over the pads where the capacitor is at the moment. I'm just going over these pads where the audio connector was. I'm just cleaning them up. And then we'll address the pads for the capacitor in a minute. There we go. Just getting rid of some of the muck and rubbish that's on there, really. It's not terrible. But like I said, the electrolyte had obviously leaked underneath here, because you can see that by the state. Look on the sides of the, well, you see where I've cleaned that there. You see where it's nice and shiny. If we have a look on the one that I haven't cleaned yet, you see how dull and yucky it is. And if we look inside, those are filthy. We're going to have to do a really good clean on them if we want to reuse them. And actually, I don't think we've got anything that I could replace them with, so we really do want to be able to reuse them. I think we're up to temperature. Yeah. So I'm just gonna. You could do this with some solder braid. You could do this with a manual desoldering station. But see, now I've got this here. That's not desoldering, I'm going to add some nice fresh solder to them, and then we'll have another quick wick at them. We've obviously got some solder there which doesn't want to flow. We've got one there. And we've got a couple here. And I think all the rest are clear, it's just them three. And I think that's, like I said, they've been affected a bit by the old that old nasty solder, so we'd rather get everything out of there. That one's clear. That one's clear. This one's being a bit... There we go. Just run my finger over there. Can't see if I can feel any high spots, which I can't. Right, I'm happy with that. That's all them holes fully nicely unblocked. And I'm just going to go in with the fiberglass pen now along there and just clean up all the solder points there that we're going to when we put the keyboard connector back on, because I'm pretty certain we definitely had some electrolyte that had leaked underneath that keyboard connector. So this is by far the best way of doing this repair. Like I said, I've explained how you can do it and just break them off and do that and not take these two things off, but it's not a good idea. We can see here that, like I said, the electrolyte has already, it has definitely leaked underneath where the keyboard connector was. So eventually, if it was left unchecked, it would start corroding through some of these little traces here, and then you start having keyboard issues and possibly many other issues. I think we've really just caught this one in time. Yeah, we've caught it before any severe damage has been done. And testament to the fact we managed to take all of the surface mount caps off it without taking a single pad with us. I'm just going to give them a... Now I've done all the rest, I'm just going to give these a really quick clean over, just make sure they're going to come up nice and shiny. I think we've got really lucky here. The back two pads there, the negative two pads for them capacitors, don't look bad at all. But the front two do look a little on the grim side. I think they'll be alright. I can't see any breaks or anything in them. And they don't look particularly corroded around the edge there where the actual trace meets the pad. What I think I'm going to do, I'm going to add some of my really good solder and then just whip them off. I think we're going to be alright with them. It's actually cleaned up better than I was expecting around here. I thought I was going to have a little bit more work to do on this part of the board, but we've got away with it quite nicely actually. It's not horrendous. We've still got to clean up, I've still got to clean them up, and we've still got to reassemble everything and test it, but so far it's looking fairly good. Now where's my really fine solder gone? What the bloody hell have I done with it? Oh, it's there, it's behind my coffee. Slurp of the coffee and grab the solder at the same time. Might as well. Right, get the iron out. And we're just going to add a touch of fresh solder to them pads, and we're going to wick this off. We're just using it to help us get rid of any contaminated solder that's basically still on them pads. Now where's my solder braid gone? Piece of solder braid. And we'll add a little bit of flux to the solder braid like we did last time. Okay, let's go in here and have a little clean up. There we go. Same with this one. There we go. That one's nice and clean, last one. There we go, so we've got 3 nice pads there now. I'm going to give them a final clean and a final little bit of a retin before we put the new components in place. I'm going to try a very slightly different technique for putting the new capacitors in there. I was watching, who was it? Adrian's Digital Basement the other night. He's working on some Mac Classics at the moment. And I was just watching the way he was putting his new surface mount electrolytics on. I thought I might just give his technique a quick try. And what he does, once he's got his pads, like I've got mine here. So I've got some nice clean pads there, I've cleaned it all up. They've all got nice fresh tinned solder on them. And what he does is he adds a little bit of solder to 2 of the pads. So, not much, just a little bit of solder to 2 of the pads. Like that. Put my iron where I can get at it. He then gets his capacitors. Get the capacitors out of there. And what he does, I might have to turn the board slightly so I can get in. I've got a positive that way. And basically what he does, get my tweezers ready. And he holds his he gets his capacitor, and he heats the pad, and just basically drops the capacitor in place. That actually worked really well. That worked incredibly well, actually. And then he goes obviously and solders this pad normally, a bit like I do from this point on. But it's the fact that he adds that little bit. He adds that little bit of solder first. That's fit really nicely. That's quite a nice technique actually. I think I've got quite a nice join there. I'm going to try that again. I mean, all I've done in the past is I've had both pads clean. I've had a little dob of solder on the end of my iron, put it in place, and then just use that dob just to, with capillary action to wick it in place. But no, this technique does work. It's so what we do is we get our capacitor lined up. We just touch the pad, make the solder molten, let go, and that's it. So it's perfectly soldered on that side, really. And then, just as I've done in the past, we're going onto this side and solder it in place. So we go in here now, and we can just solder the capacitor in place. Let's add a tiny touch more on there. There we go. And that's it. No, I'm quite pleased. I'm quite impressed with that technique. That works really, really nicely. Right, I've just got a tiny little spike there. I want to just. There we go. That's gone. That's better. So that is all the that's all the capacitors on this board now replaced. All we've got to do now is put the keyboard connector back on there and put the 2 audio jacks back on. But first we're going to have to see if we can clean these up, because we can't stick these back on there. They're filthy. They are really, really bad actually. Can you see inside? I don't know if it can make out quite how how dirty it is in there. You can see the blackness. You can certainly see it on the side of the legs there. Can you see? I'm pretty sure this has come from the leaking capacitors. I think that's what's caused this. You see, oops. You see all the tarnishing and blackness on there. So let's have a go at cleaning these up before we reinstate them in the board. I'll just put the board to one side so we're not working with dirty things over the top of the board. We'll just slide the board to that side there. I think it's going to be safe there. And we'll concentrate on seeing what we can do with these. It might be simpler just giving them a bit of a scrub with some isopropyl. So definitely need to see if we can get. Let me zoom you down so you can see quite how manky these are. Come on, focus. Focus, you bugger. Focus on that. Alright, I'll zoom you out a bit. Oops. Can you, is that focused on that? Hopefully. Focus on that. There we go, that's better. Right, so yeah, we're going to have to see if we can clean them up, because they are filthy. I'll get a little bit of isopropyl on the end of the toothbrush, and I think it's going to be a case that that really ain't coming off too easy either. I think it's one of them cases that if I had some replacements, I'd put replacements in. But I don't, so unfortunately these are going to have to go back in. I wonder if I can... That one's too severe. I've got my little... It's basically a brass version of the fiberglass brush that I used on the board. You wouldn't want to use this on a circuit board unless it was really, really bad though. I might do. Get the iron in, just... Yeah. Yeah, definitely capacitor leakage, because as soon as I started warming these legs up, it stinks of fish again. So it's your telltale sign that. Because most electrolytic capacitors, the electrolyte, I'm pretty sure it's an alkali, and it absolutely reeks of like bad fish when it gets warm. And it's cleaned up okay. Let's try the white ones while we're in here, because they're pretty manked down there as well. Yeah, same thing. As soon as I warm these pins up on here, it absolutely reeks of bad fish. I don't think these are 100% standard, these connectors either. They have like a switching function in them that standard phono connectors don't have. So you couldn't just like... I think you could put normal ones on, but you'd lose a certain function on the way that these work. Is it that if you only plug one wire into them, it'll give you like a mono signal? And if you, obviously if you plug them in stereo, it gives you a stereo signal. But if you only plug like one wire into one side, it connects the other, it mixes the other signal into it and gives you like a mono stereo mix. I think it's something like that. I know they're not just a standard phono connector. And they've cleaned up okay. I might see if we can just straighten up them pins on that. Give that a quick straighten like that. Just make it easier for us to get these back in the board. They've certainly come up a lot cleaner than they were, as you can see. They were pretty mank them. They don't look too bad now, they're at least shiny. Same, well, that one we'll do a little bit more work on now, just before we put it back, so we can get some of this crud off from up here. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's 1,000 times better than it was. That side's not as bad actually, it's just a little bit corroded up there. again, it's cleaned off, it's cleaned back to where it's decent enough. Right, let's stick those back in the board. Now, can you remember what we said before? Let's get you up there. It was white for that side, weren't it? It was white on this side, red on that side, weren't it? I hope it was, because that's the way they're going in. Why are you not going in that hole? Because there's a little bit of solder still in that top hole there that's stopping us getting the thing through. I won't use the good solder, I'll use my other solder, and we'll add a bit to there, like that, and we'll try and suck that out with the desoldering pump. There we go. Let's try and get that back in there now. And that fits back in there perfectly this time. We'll do the same with the red one. Again, there we go. Make sure that those are square and going to sit in properly, because the white one's ever so slightly bigger than the red one, if you aren't aware of that. Right, so those are back home. We just need to solder them in place, and then we can look at putting the keyboard connector back on. In fact, we can use the thicker solder for this, and we'll save the fine stuff for putting the keyboard connector back on. Hook that up. Slow that back in place. There we go. Ground ones are a bit of a pain to do, but there's just about enough heat in this to do it. Okay, there we go. So that's the audio connectors. Just make sure those are sat nicely on the board. In fact, that one's slightly raised, so I'll just heat that first pad up and just push it ever so slightly, just like that. That's it, and let that go. That's it. That's seated nice and flat now. It was nearly perfect, it just wasn't quite, so I thought it was just as well to go back in there and just heat that solder pad there up and just give it a little bit of pressure with my thumb, and that's all it needed. That's clicked back on. Right, so next we better put the keyboard connector back in place. So let's take this. I think it can only go in one way around by the look of it. We'll gently drop that back in place. Make sure it seats down. That's seated down nicely there, as you can see. We'll spin that over, and then we've got all that to resolder. We'll use the nice thin solder for this. First one, and we'll whip over onto this side. We'll solder one on that side, so that basically anchors it in place. We don't need to worry now about it moving and dropping out. Then it's just a case of going each pin at a time. I think I'm going to do the disc mod as a separate video. We'll get this done. We know this video won't be quite as long as the other two, but I think if I was to do the disc mod real justice, then it'd make this video too long. So I'll finish this one up, We'll do some testing. We'll plug we'll plug the Gotek back into this. We'll get it set up on the desk. Just make sure it boots and everything works, and then in the next 600 video we'll do the DF1 DF0 disc switch mod, and we will look at putting the Amiga basically back together. Obviously bearing in mind we're also going to be doing a RAM upgrade for it. So I've bought a little 1 meg RAM upgrade for this one. It's got I think it's got a real-time clock on it as well. Only a cheap second-hand one off eBay. But we'll do another video on perhaps fitting that and the hard drive and what have you. So there might be another 2 videos in this A600. Two more connections on here to do. Damn it, I'm going to have to get another piece of solder out. Thought I'd just have enough with that little piece I had there, but no. It was just getting that little bit too sharp where I was going to burn my fingers. Oh, hang on, I found another little stub here. That'll do. There's only got one connection now on this keyboard connector to do now. There we go. Right, excellent. That's the keyboard connector soldered back in position. So what I'm going to do next is we're going to just have a quick clean up of this part of the board where we've done all the rework on the back end. So we'll use the old isopropyl and the toothbrush and just have a quick brush round, get rid of any flux residue from that solder we've just used. And obviously it'll help get rid of it if there was any electrolyte that's leaked through onto this side of the board. It doesn't look bad at all actually. There was a little bit of a whiff when we was taking these off though, but that could have just been the fact we was heating the other side of the board up, and obviously, you know, it's when you heat that stinky electrolyte up, it smells. It starts to stink. Right. Anyway, I think we've got rid of all the residue. There's a little sticky residue there. I was like, I wonder if there's been a sticker there or something. Right, let's just get a quick Q-tip in and we'll just have a quick wipe round there. Need to be a bit careful, but let's have a bit of a clean up while we're in here. That doesn't look bad. Right, yeah, that looks pretty good. Quite pleased with that. As we can see, we've got the keyboard connector soldered back in, we've got the audio jacks soldered back in. We flip the board back over. There's our 2 new electrolytic capacitors, nicely put in place. So that's basically it. We'll zoom you out a little bit. That is the Amiga 600 board fully recapped. So we've got all the capacitors in that section done, all the cleanup area in that section done, that capacitor replaced, those 4 capacitors replaced, and then obviously the capacitors in this area all done now. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly pause the video and I'll reset my camera up on my other tripod. I'll grab out the Gotek drive and what have you, and we'll just get the computer just basically set up, just bare on the desk like this, and we'll just have a really quick test, just make sure everything's actually going to work on it. We'll call that quits for this video then if we're happy with everything, and in the next video we'll do the disk swap mod on it. So back in a sec. Okay, we're back, and as you can see, I've got the Amiga basically all set up here. Like I say, it's a bare bones setup. I've got a mouse connected. I've got the Gotek connected with a USB stick in it. I've got the video connected up, and I've got some audio connected up. The audio is connected up to this rather dodgy TV, so we're probably not going to get the full stereo out of it, but at least we can just hear that the audio is in fact working. But yeah, basically we're set up and ready to test. So what I've done is I think I've got this set up with Arkanoid, because I mean that'll give us a fairly decent test. We'll be able to make sure everything's working. I think disk 6 on this USB 6 Arkanoid. We've also got Workbench on here that we can possibly try. Let's switch on and we'll see whether it's going to try and boot from disk. Let's see what it's going to do. Nothing so far. We've just got the white screen. Ah, there. We've got disk activity. And it seems to be booting. There we go. Hopefully it don't want you to press the keyboard. I think it's still loading at the moment, but like I say, hopefully it doesn't want you to press the keyboard at the moment, because that's would be stuff then. Here we are. Which hopefully it's going to load. I think we've got some. This is a US version of it. I think we're having some issues for the simple fact it was designed for NTSC. But have we got any audio? I'm not sure. I don't know if there's anything else actually on this stick apart from this and Workbench. But we can see the computer's definitely actually booting up. Let me just switch it off. I'll just see if there's something on disk 7 on this. I'm not sure. I know it's got a Workbench on disk 1, so it doesn't load anything here. It just comes up to the boot screen. We know there isn't anything else on this USB stick, but oh no, it seems to be trying to load something. And we've got some audio. But I mean, we've shown that the Amiga's definitely booting up. The Amiga's working. Any look, it'll boot into something. Might be wanting you to press the keyboard. Unfortunately, like I say, I haven't got anything connected at the moment. Oh, I was thinking we're still trying to read. What we'll do, I'm just going to try and boot it into Workbench. And we'll just make sure it boots into Workbench. Okay. I mean, to test the audio properly, when we've got it all rebuilt, I'll set Pro Tracker or something like that up and we can have a real good test on some speakers with the audio on it. Let's just make sure it's going to boot into Workbench this time. And once it's booted into Workbench, to be fair, I'm going to be quite happy with it. And then, like I said, in the next video we'll do the disk drive AB, well, the 01 mod. Keep your fingers crossed it's going to boot into Workbench now. It should do, because like I said, it's booted everything else we've thrown at it. Yep, we've got Amiga Workbench up. That seems quite happy. Workbench 2.1. This mouse is. We're definitely have to do a video on perhaps sorting some of these tank mice out, because all three are a bit. Well, one's completely unusable and the other two are a bit iffy. But the computer itself, as you can see, that's working fine. So I'm going to leave it there for now for this video. So that was 3 whole parts just to change the capacitors on this Amiga 600 board, but to do it properly, you know. We haven't just glued some through holes on top and called that repaired. We have actually gone through it properly. We've removed the old capacitors, we've cleaned the board up, we've tried to get rid of as much of the old electrolyte and everything as we possibly can. We've cleaned up any damage that's already done to the board around them chip legs, things like that. Put nice new capacitors on there, and as you can see, we do still have a nice working 600. So like I said, we'll do the disc mod in the next video, and then the video after that I think we'll look at putting this thing all back together. Hopefully my RAM expansion will have arrived by that point. We can put it all back, the case all back together properly, do the hard drive, do the RAM expansion, and we should have quite a nice little working Amiga 600 at the end of it. So I hope you enjoyed that little video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.